The soundstage was unusually quiet that morning. Too quiet for a place normally buzzing with stunt rehearsals, booming speakers, and directors shouting instructions. Instead, every crew member, stuntman, and camera operator stood frozen, watching one man march across the glossy floor with the confidence of someone who never backed down from a challenge. Jason Statham. He walked like the floor belonged to him, boots hitting the ground with sharp purpose, veins still pumped from an intense training session. Sweat glistened across his arms as he cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and stopped dead center of the rehearsal mat. His eyes locked on one man sitting calmly in the corner, sipping tea as if none of this energy concerned him. Steven Seagal, long black robe, amber-tinted glasses, hands resting quietly, still silent, completely unmoved. Jason pointed straight at him. "You," he said, loud enough for his voice to echo through the rafters. "Me right now. No stunt doubles, no choreography. Let's see what you really got." A ripple of shock moved through the room. The stunt team shifted awkwardly. Some whispered under their breath. Others lifted their phones, already sensing something unbelievable was about to happen. Nobody dared speak louder than a whisper. This wasn't just two actors messing around. This was Jason Statham throwing down a real challenge. Steven didn't lift his head, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He took another slow sip of tea, set the cup down gently, and finally raised his eyes. "Jason," he said in that low, unhurried voice, "are you sure you want this?" The question wasn't loud, but it hit harder than any punch. Jason smirked, rolling his wrists as if warming up for a fight he had waited years to have. "Absolutely," a camera assistant whispered. "Dude, is Statham crazy?" Another answered, "No, he's serious. He actually wants to test Seagal." At that exact moment, someone opened the rehearsal door and stepped inside, then immediately froze, sensing the tension in the air. You could feel the electricity. Two legends, one challenge, an entire Hollywood crew watching history about to unfold. Nobody knew what would happen next. But what happened stunned every single person in that room. The tension inside the studio hadn't faded. If anything, it grew heavier, settling over the crew like a silent storm cloud. People moved to the edges of the room, creating a wide circle around the mat. Nobody told them to. Everyone just instinctively knew this wasn't something you watched from the sidelines. This was something you witnessed. The movie being filmed was one of the biggest action collaborations Hollywood had attempted in years. Two generations of action icons in the same frame. The producers had dreamed of explosive stunts, intense fight scenes, and box office magic. What they hadn't expected was a real challenge between the stars. Earlier that morning, Jason Statham had been running a rehearsal with younger stunt performers. He liked to teach them techniques personally, clean footwork, proper punches, how to fall without getting injured. He enjoyed the grind, the sweat, the work. It reminded him of where he started. "Rotate your shoulders, not your hips." Jason instructed one of the new stunt guys. "You're telegraphing too much." The stuntman nodded quickly and repeated the move. "Better," Jason said. Jason was still demonstrating combinations when the studio door opened with a slow creaking sound. Heads turned, conversations paused. Even the sound of punching pads stopped. Steven Seagal stepped in. No entourage, no rush, no dramatic entrance. Just Steven moving with a kind of quiet confidence that didn't need attention to feel powerful. He wore his traditional black training robe, loosely tied at the waist, sleeves hanging comfortably. His orange-tinted glasses reflected the overhead lights, and his expression was unreadable, calm, focused, the type of calm that made people straighten their posture without realizing why. Jason glanced over and smirked. You finally decided to join us, old man. He joked loudly, wiping sweat from his forehead. A few crew members laughed. Some snickered, others exchanged glances. But Steven didn't react, didn't respond. He simply walked to the corner of the room, sat down, and began preparing a cup of tea from a small thermos he carried everywhere. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Oh, come on," he said, tapping his gloves together. "At least warm up with us. Show these guys how you move." Still no reaction. Jason's voice sharpened a bit, though he tried to keep it light. "You hear the stories, right? Seagal is fast. Seagal is unbeatable. Seagal can take down 10 men. People say a lot of things." A few people chuckled again. Jason shrugged and continued. "Let's see if that's true or just Hollywood myth." The stunt team grew quiet. Some shuffled back, sensing where this was heading. Others pulled out their phones discreetly. One of the older stunt coordinators whispered to his colleague, "Jason shouldn't push him like that. Steven isn't the type to get provoked, but when he responds, he really responds." Jason turned back to the younger stunt guys. "Everyone here trains hard," he said. "And nobody gets a pass, not even legends." It was half a joke, half a challenge. Steven finally looked up, not annoyed, not bothered, just acknowledging Jason's presence. Jason exhaled, rolling his neck. "That's all I wanted, a little attention." He walked across the mat, sweat dripping down his temple, muscles still warm from training. The crew stepped aside as he approached Steven, making a clear pathway. The silence deepened, the kind that comes before something unforgettable. Jason stopped just a few feet away. "You and me," he said. "Not a fight, a test, a friendly one. Just to see your timing, your movement, your technique." Steven finished stirring his tea, set it aside, and finally spoke. "Jason," he said softly, "some things aren't proven by force." Jason let out a short laugh. "Everything can be proven by force." Steven's head tilted just slightly, as if considering the thought. The young actors standing nearby exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "This is getting real. Like really real." Another replied, "If Jason keeps pushing, Seagal is going to respond, and I'm not sure Jason understands what that means." Jason took a half step back into a fighting stance. Not aggressive, just ready. "Come on," he said, grinning. "Show me what you got." Steven didn't move. Instead, he gently placed his palm on the floor as if grounding himself. His posture was perfect. No tension, no stiffness, no signs of preparing for a strike or dodge. He simply existed in the moment. The producer entered the room just then, a folder of schedules in his hand. "What's everyone doing?" he asked loudly. "Why is nobody rehearsing?" But when he saw Jason squared up in the center of the mat and Steven sitting calmly in the corner, the folder slowly lowered in his hand. "Oh no," he whispered. "Not again." But it was too late. The atmosphere had changed. The energy had shifted. A storm was forming, one built not on anger, but on pride, respect, and the clash of two worlds. And everyone in that studio could feel it. History wasn't going to wait. And what came next would be remembered by every witness forever. The air inside the rehearsal hall felt charged, like the crackle that comes right before lightning strikes. Jason Statham stood in the center of the mat, shoulders squared, eyes locked on Steven Seagal. The younger stunt performers backed up even farther now, forming a ring almost 20 feet wide. Nobody wanted to be too close to whatever was about to unfold. Jason rotated his wrists, loosening them, then shook out his legs with the calm precision of a man who trained his entire life. Every part of him looked ready to test, ready to prove, ready to push a legend until he got an answer. Steven, on the other hand, didn't look ready at all. He looked still. He rose from the floor slowly, almost lazily, as if nothing happening in the room required urgency from him. His robe fell neatly into place, sleeves swaying softly. His head remained slightly bowed, eyes hidden behind his amber glasses. The contrast was unreal. Jason was all intensity and motion. Steven was the opposite, quiet, unmoving, unreadable. Jason inhaled deeply and stepped forward. "You're not going to ignore me now," he said. "You wanted respect? Earn it." Someone in the back gasped quietly. Another murmured, "Oh man, he's really doing this." Jason lifted his hands into a light sparring guard. Nothing brutal, nothing that would damage the movie's biggest star, but enough to initiate a test of timing. "I'm coming slow," Jason warned. No surprises. Jason stepped in. A soft jab, controlled, clean textbook. But Steven wasn't there, not because he moved fast, but because he moved early. Before Jason's fist even reached halfway, Steven gently shifted his weight, letting the punch drift past, his shoulder like wind brushing against fabric. Jason blinked. That wasn't luck, so he tried again. This time, a straight punch, slightly faster. Steven's foot slid half an inch, his torso turning just enough for Jason's punch to miss by the width of a fingernail. It didn't look flashy. It didn't look dramatic. It looked effortless. A few stuntmen exchanged shocked looks. "Did you see that?" He didn't even dodge. He just wasn't there. Jason felt his jaw tighten. He raised his guard again. "Okay," he muttered again. This time, a combo jab, cross, hook. All controlled, but faster, precise, professional, experienced. But Steven didn't block, didn't counter, didn't raise his hands. He simply shifted, tilted, glided around each punch like he was letting gravity guide him. Nothing touched him. Cameras came up. People whispered, "What the hell is he doing? Is this some kind of trick?" No, he's reading Jason. Jason stepped back, breathing harder now, not from exertion, but from something else. Confusion. He had fought real fighters, boxers, kickboxers, martial artists. He knew how people reacted. They blocked. They flinched. They got pushed back. But Steven stood like water. No tension, no fear, no effort. Jason clenched his fists. "All right," he said quietly. "Now I'm coming real." He lunged faster this time. A straight punch aimed at Steven's chest. The room held its breath. Steven turned just slightly, just an inch. So Jason's punch slid past his robe, the fabric whispering from the breeze of it. Jason's eyes widened. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. Steven saw it coming, all of it. Jason switched angles. Hook from the left. Steven shifted. Uppercut from the right. Steven leaned a fraction, low kick toward the thigh. Steven stepped aside like he'd known the kick was coming before Jason even threw it. For the first time, Jason felt something sharp inside his chest. Not fear, something worse. Frustration. He grit his teeth and stepped forward aggressively. "Stop running." Steven's head lifted slightly. "I'm not running," he said calmly. "I'm just not where you want me to be." Jason lunged again, this time wild. A real attempt to connect. He knew it. The crew knew it. And Steven definitely knew it. Before Jason's fist could even extend fully, Steven moved. Not fast, not flashy, just precise. His hand lifted gently and tapped Jason's wrist, barely a touch. Jason's entire arm collapsed inward, his stance thrown off balance. He stumbled. He regained footing. He stared. "What did you just?" Before he could finish, Steven tapped his shoulder. Another soft, harmless touch. Jason's body shifted off-center again, his feet scrambling to stay grounded. A murmuring wave erupted among the crew. "Oh my God, what is happening? He's not even trying. Jason's pulse hammered through his neck. His pride felt punched harder than any part of his body. Steven lowered his hand. "I told you," he said with no arrogance, no mockery, just truth. "Some things aren't proven by force." Jason stepped back slowly, chest rising and falling. The producer covered his mouth. The young stuntmen stared with open jaws. Several people filmed without blinking. Nobody fully understood what had just happened, but everyone felt the same thing. Steven Seagal hadn't avoided Jason's attacks. He had predicted them, and Jason Statham, one of the fastest, cleanest fighters in Hollywood, hadn't landed a single touch. The real fight hadn't even begun yet, but the room already knew. This wasn't going to be a fight at all. This was going to be a lesson. For a full 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Jason Statham stood frozen in the center of the mat, chest rising and falling, eyes locked on Steven Seagal with a look he hadn't worn in years. Confusion mixed with respect, frustration tangled with curiosity. His punches hadn't just missed. They had been neutralized before they even existed. And that reality hit him harder than any physical strike could have. Around him, the entire crew reacted like a single stunned organism. One stuntman whispered, "That wasn't normal." Another replied, "That wasn't Hollywood. That was real." Someone in the back slowly lowered his phone, replaying the footage he just recorded in disbelief. On screen, Jason's punches cut through the air like bullets. Clean, fast, trained. And Steven, he moved like time obeyed him differently. Barely shifting, barely touching, yet redirecting everything without a hint of effort. Jason swallowed, clenching and unclenching his jaw. He took a step closer, not in challenge, but trying to understand. "How did you do that?" he asked, more to himself than to Steven. Steven didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. A young stunt actress near the sideline covered her mouth. That wasn't blocking. He was ahead of Jason's moves. Another stunt performer nodded slowly, almost afraid to speak. He's reading his intention. Before Jason throws. Even the older stunt coordinator who had been in the industry for 40 years looked shaken. "I've seen martial artists," he whispered. "I've seen good ones. But this is different. Seagal's not reacting. He's predicting." Steven stood relaxed again, hands folded in front of him, his posture soft and open. Not proud, not aggressive, simply present. Jason wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to being outmaneuvered in front of an audience. He wasn't used to anyone neutralizing his timing. His confidence, normally unshakable, cracked just slightly. "Let's go again," Jason said, clearing his throat. This time it wasn't a challenge. It was a request. Steven didn't move. Instead, he said quietly, "Jason, why are you fighting me?" Jason blinked. "What? You're not angry?" Steven continued calmly, "You're not threatened. You're trying to prove something, not to me." He paused, tilting his head. "To yourself?" A ripple of murmurs filled the room. Jason stared at Steven like the man had just read him like an open book. The producer, still hovering near the entrance, whispered to his assistant, "Is this a rehearsal or a therapy session?" Jason stepped back, rubbing the side of his neck. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. There was truth in Steven's words, and Jason knew it. Around them, the tension shifted, not reduced, but transformed. This was no longer about ego, no longer about a challenge. This was a lesson unfolding, and every witness knew they were seeing something they'd never forget. Jason lifted his hands again, not in anger, but in respect. "Teach me, then," he said quietly. Steven stepped forward for the first time since standing up. His movements were as fluid as water, almost floating. He placed his fingers gently under Jason's wrist. "Don't tense," Steven said. "I'm not tensing," Jason replied. Steven simply raised an eyebrow over his glasses. Jason exhaled, shoulders relaxing involuntarily. Steven guided Jason's hand through the air in a slow arc. "Feel that?" Steven asked. Jason nodded. "What is it?" "Balance and tension," Steven corrected. "Before the body moves, the mind decides. I don't stop your strikes. I see the decision before the movement." Jason felt a chill. Steven continued. "No arrogance, no drama, just pure teaching. You rely on speed. You rely on strength. You rely on precision." He paused. "All of that is physical. I rely on awareness. I don't need to be faster. I only need to be earlier." A whisper spread through the room. "That's insane. That's genius. That's real Aikido." Jason stared at Steven in a new light. "This is why your opponents never touch you," he muttered. Steven nodded once. "And this is why you couldn't touch me." Jason stepped back slightly, absorbing the reality of what he'd just witnessed and what he'd felt. Jason Statham, one of the fastest reflexes in Hollywood, had just been outmatched by a man who barely moved. The door opened again. A camera operator walked in, wearing headphones and holding equipment. "What did I miss?" he asked casually. The entire studio turned to him like he'd asked if water was dry. One stuntman stepped forward, eyes wide. "You missed Jason Statham punching at a ghost." Another added, "And the ghost drank tea while dodging." Jason huffed out a laugh despite himself. Steven remained still, its expression neutral. Yet there was a hint of something behind his eyes now. Not mockery, not dominance, something closer to patience. A teacher's patience. Jason inhaled deeply. "All right," he said. "One more full speed." Steven raised his hand gently. "No," he said softly. "We're done for now." Jason frowned. "Why?" Steven's answer was simple. "Because you finally saw what you needed to see." The room fell silent again. Not tense this time. Not electric, but reverent. Everyone in that studio knew. The real fight wasn't physical. It was internal. And Jason Statham had just stepped into a world where fists didn't matter, but awareness did. Hollywood hadn't seen anything like this before. And what came next would take the shock to an entirely new level. The morning after the leaked footage went viral, Hollywood didn't wake up. It exploded. News outlets ran non-stop coverage. Reaction channels were uploading by the minute, and the debate spread like wildfire. For the first time in years, two of the most iconic action stars of their generation were face to face. Not in a scripted movie scene, but in a real, unfiltered confrontation. And now, the world wanted answers. Steven Seagal stood in the courtyard of his private dojo, the early light slanting across the polished wooden floor. He was calm, but beneath that calmness was something he rarely let anyone see. Focus sharp enough to cut steel. He watched the footage again on his phone. Jason closing the distance. Jason shifting his foot. Jason sending a low attack toward his knee. A dangerous move. A reckless one. Or maybe deliberate. He exhaled slowly and locked the phone. From the doorway, Hiroshi, his senior student, stepped inside quietly. "Sensei, the press is outside again. They've been here since dawn." "I know," Seagal said without even turning. "They want a story. But the truth is, Jason doesn't even know what he started." Hiroshi hesitated. "Are you going to respond?" Seagal gave a small smile. Hollywood will get its answer, but not through gossip. Across the city, Jason Statham sat in an interview chair at a high-end studio. Bright lights illuminated his face, but he looked restless. The producers from a major streaming platform had arranged this exclusive clarification interview, hoping to control the narrative before things spiraled further. The host cleared her throat as the cameras rolled. "Jason, the world saw you and Steven Seagal in what looked like a serious confrontation. Social media is calling it the Great Action Star Showdown. What really happened?" Jason leaned back and folded his arms. "Look, love, it wasn't planned. We were both at the same training facility. There was tension. Some moves were exchanged. It got a bit messy." "A bit?" the host teased. "Some people think you were really trying to take him down." Jason took a breath. "I respect Steven. Always have. But if someone steps into my space, I respond. That's all." The host smiled politely. But she had one more card. Steven says, "You don't understand what you've started." Jason's jaw tightened. Then he should tell me himself. Hours later, Seagal's team called a press conference outside a Beverly Hills martial arts center. Reporters crowded behind the barricades, microphones stretched forward like arrows aimed at him. Seagal stepped up to the podium with the slow, deliberate confidence of a man who had seen 100 storms and never bowed to one. "I know what's being said," he began. "I know what's being shown, but a few seconds of video never shows the truth. Jason and I have trained in very different worlds. His style is fast. Mine is something else entirely." One reporter shouted, "So, are you saying Jason attacked you?" "I'm saying," Seagal replied, pausing long enough to increase the tension, "that when two martial artists of our level cross paths unexpectedly, there's always an imbalance, and sometimes energy clashes." Another reporter yelled, "Will there be a rematch?" That's when Seagal leaned into the mic. "If Jason wants clarity, he knows where to find me." The crowd erupted. By evening, the world had formed two camps: Team Statham and Team Seagal. Actors, fighters, stunt coordinators, and fans all took sides. Some said Seagal was the true martial artist, calm, technical, dangerous. Others backed Jason, explosive, modern, fearless. Hollywood had not seen such a divide since the golden age of action heroes. Late that night, Jason sat alone in his home gym, watching the press conference replay. Seagal's words replayed in his mind. "If Jason wants clarity, he knows where to find me." He wiped sweat from his forehead, smirking slightly. Seagal wanted to play this as a martial arts rivalry. Fine. Jason wasn't afraid of that. But something felt bigger, deeper. Maybe this wasn't just about respect. Maybe it wasn't even about ego. Maybe Seagal knew something, and Jason didn't. Jason finally set down the towel and grabbed his keys. "If he wants a conversation," Jason muttered, "he'll get one in person." He walked toward the garage, the hum of paparazzi helicopters growing louder outside. Hollywood's spotlight was fixed on him now, but he didn't care. Tonight wasn't about the cameras. It was about settling something that had been brewing long before the leaked footage. Something the world wasn't ready for. As the garage door lifted, Jason stepped into the night on his way to confront the one man who could turn this Hollywood rivalry into a global storm. The road leading to Steven Seagal's private dojo was dead silent, almost too silent for Los Angeles. Jason Statham's black SUV rolled forward slowly, headlights cutting through the mist, settling over the hills. He wasn't here for drama, and he wasn't here for the cameras. This was between him and Steven. No fans, no press, no Hollywood politics. He pulled up outside the tall wooden gates. A single security guard stepped forward. "Mr. Statham." Jason nodded. The guard opened the gate without another word, as if he'd been expecting him. Inside, warm lantern lights illuminated the stone path leading to the main hall. Jason stepped out of the SUV, scanning the quiet surroundings. Even for a martial arts compound, the atmosphere felt ancient, heavy, like the walls themselves remembered every fight that ever happened here. He walked toward the entrance, hands in his pockets, shoulders squared, no fear, no hesitation, but alert, very alert. Inside the dojo, Steven Seagal was waiting. He stood in the center of the wooden floor, wearing his dark training robe, hands folded calmly in front of him. He didn't look angry. He didn't look defensive. He looked ready. Jason stepped inside. The doors slid shut behind him. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Two men who had built careers on fighting, discipline, and fearlessness. Two men now locked in a silent standoff that carried more weight than any Hollywood scene. Seagal spoke first. "You came quicker than I expected." Jason smirked. "You called me out in front of the whole world." "What? Did you expect that I'd send an email?" Seagal gave a short laugh. "Sit." Jason didn't sit. "Let's save the ceremony, mate. You said, I don't understand what I started, so explain it." Seagal studied him for a long moment. "Jason, the footage people saw wasn't the full story." Jason crossed his arms. "I know what happened. I was there. You saw the fight." Seagal replied calmly, "You didn't see the consequences." Jason frowned slightly. "Consequences? It was a scuffle, Steven, not the end of the world." "That depends," Seagal said, stepping forward slowly on who was watching. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Hollywood, social media, the fans." Seagal shook his head. "No, people far more dangerous than fans." He turned and walked toward a small wooden table. Jason followed, cautious but curious. Seagal picked up a small envelope and handed it to him. Jason opened it. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance images taken from what looked like a high-tech drone. They showed Jason arriving at the training facility. But there was more. Men in suits, black vans, satellite timestamps. Jason looked up sharply. "What the hell is this?" Seagal's voice lowered. "Those men don't follow celebrities. They follow weapons, intelligence assets, people with combat value." Jason's face darkened. "And why are they following me?" "Not you," Seagal said. "Us?" Jason froze. Seagal continued, "You think what happened between us was an accident? Two action stars bumping into each other, tempers flaring. No. Someone leaked that footage within seconds. Jason, seconds. That doesn't happen without intention." Jason paced slowly, processing. "Who?" Seagal exhaled slowly. "There's a private organization off the books. Global Reach. They've been recruiting elite fighters, military-trained operatives, martial artists, and celebrities with combat credibility." Jason frowned. "Why would they want us?" "Because we're symbols," Seagal said. "And symbols are powerful tools." Jason slammed the envelope on the table. "You think they staged our confrontation?" Seagal nodded once. "Yes." Jason shook his head. "No, no one staged my punches, and no one staged yours." "You're right," Seagal said. "The fight was real. The setup wasn't." Jason looked at him intensely. "So you knew. You sensed something. I've been sensing it for years." Seagal admitted. "People watching, approaching, testing boundaries. But when you and I crossed paths that day, something shifted. They saw an opportunity." Jason leaned back against a wooden beam, breathing hard but steady. "So, what now?" "They want us to fight again, for their entertainment." Seagal's eyes darkened. "No, they want us to choose sides." Jason laughed bitterly. "And I'm guessing you're not planning to join them." Seagal's voice almost growled. "I've spent half my life shutting down people like them." Jason stepped closer. "So you brought me here to warn me?" "To warn you?" Seagal said. "And to ask you a question?" Jason stared. "What question?" Seagal took one step closer until the two men stood only inches apart. If they come for you, if they come for us, are you willing to stand with me instead of against me? The room felt heavier, colder. Jason didn't answer immediately. He looked around the ancient dojo, then back at the man standing in front of him, his rival, his equal, his unexpected ally. Finally, he spoke. I don't trust you, Steven. A pause. But I trust the fight. Seagal gave a slow nod. That's enough. Before either man could say another word, a sudden metallic click echoed from outside. Jason stiffened. What was that? Seagal didn't blink. They're here. The metallic click echoed again, louder this time. Jason and Steven turned toward the sliding wooden doors at the far end of the dojo. The lantern flames trembled as if something massive had shifted outside. Jason whispered, You expecting someone else? Seagal didn't answer. His eyes narrowed, jaw tightening just slightly enough to reveal that even he didn't like what was coming. A shadow moved across the paper panel of the door. Then another and another. Heavy boots, controlled breathing. Professionals. Jason slid one foot back, settling into a stance without even thinking. Looks like your friends finally decided to knock. Seagal remained perfectly still, hands loose, posture relaxed. But his entire presence sharpened like a blade being unshathed. No, he said quietly. They don't knock. The doors blasted open, splintering off their rails. 3 men entered first. Fully armored tactical suits, matte black helmets, and suppressed weapons aimed forward. Not police, not military. Something much more secretive. Behind them, 2 more stepped inside, each scanning the room like machines. Jason muttered, These guys look serious. They are, Seagal replied. And they're not here to talk? One of the armored men stepped forward. Mr. Seagal, Mr. Statham, you are requested for immediate acquisition. Jason tilted his head. Requested that what you call this? The man ignored him. You will come with us. There will be no conflict if you comply. Jason smirked. Mate, there's already a conflict. The leader raised his weapon. That is your final. He never finished. Seagal moved first. A blur, a whisper of cloth. His hands snapped like lightning, redirecting the man's weapon upward at the exact moment he squeezed the trigger, sending the suppressed shot harmlessly into the ceiling. Jason launched forward instantly, cracking an elbow into the second man's visor, followed by a driving knee that sent him crashing backward into the wall. The remaining operatives surged in, but they were too slow. Seagal pivoted, arms flowing in smooth circles like water turning to steel. Every motion collapsed, an attacker's balance or crushed the nerve points in their wrists, forcing weapons to the floor with metallic clatters. Jason fought like fire, explosive, precise, unstoppable. A spinning back kick sent one operative flying over a wooden bench. A palm strike shattered another's helmet faceplate, dropping him cold. In less than 15 seconds, 5 professionally trained operatives lay groaning or motionless on the dojo floor. Jason panted lightly, shaking out his shoulders. Well, he said, that was fun. Seagal didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply knelt beside one of the unconscious men and removed a small device strapped under the armor, black, square, and blinking. Jason frowned. What is that? A tracker, Seagal said. And a transmitter. Jason stepped back. Meaning? Seagal replied, holding up the blinking device. They didn't just come for us. He crushed it between his fingers. Sparks flew. They came to see if we'd fight together. Jason stared at him. And now they know. Seagal nodded. Yes. Which means this isn't the end. It's the beginning. Outside, more engines rumbled in the distance. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Jason exhaled sharply. You got a plan? Seagal stood tall, brushing dust off his robe. For now, stay close. Jason huffed a laugh. Thought you'd never ask. The headlights grew brighter, sweeping across the walls from outside. Seagulls glanced at him. Jason. Yeah, no matter what they offer you. Remember who started this and why? Jason cracked his knuckles, eyes locked on the door. Don't worry, I didn't come here to switch teams. Seagal nodded, once slow, heavy, powerful. The ground vibrated as the next wave of vehicles break outside. Jason whispered, You ready? Seagal lowered into a stance, calm, unshakable. I've been ready since the day they decided to watch us. The lanterns flickered violently as footsteps approached, dozens this time. And then the final line of the story landed with a quiet force. Jason, the real fight begins.